Welcome back to another episode of Red Hawk Media. Today we're taking a look at text animations. We're going to jump right in, so let's get started. There's going to be a few assumptions that there's some basic knowledge of After Effects, so I'm going to move along quite quickly. Getting started, we're going to create first a new composition. We're going to go up to Composition, New. And then this, of course, you should set up according to whatever your project parameters are. So if you go into the presets, we're working with 1080 and we're working at 30 frames per second. Let's do the HDTV here. HDTV. All right. So here's our preset. Do this for whatever your project size is going to be. This happens to be what we're working with. So I click OK. We got a new comp. Okay. Here's our composition set up. Now, I have nothing in the composition right now, but we're going to very quickly change that. Before we do that, there are two things that maybe you might want to do. With your tabs over on the right-hand side here, we're going to be working with a lot of text. So I put my character and paragraph tab up by themselves here. Normally, character is wedged in next to effects and presets, and normally paragraph is somewhere down by the tracking window. I got rid of the tracking window altogether because we're not going to be using that for this particular tutorial. So with the character and paragraph tab up here, you're ready to begin. First thing, we're going to go ahead and create a text layer. I'm just clicking on the typing tool, and then I'm going to very quickly click in here, and I'm going to start typing. So let's just put in text, so it's nice and big here, and we'll zoom out so that this looks normal, and there we go. All right, so now with our active viewing area here, we're going to go ahead and take this. It's a very small font size, so I just highlighted it, and then I'm going to drag this up so it's nice and big so we can see what we're doing. Now if I click V, I can go to the moving tool, and now I can take that text and move it around to wherever I want. Okay, so the beginning of our text animations, we've got some text. We're going to begin with a change in opacity. Now, basic understanding of this, we're going to have at least two keyframes, okay? One to start an animation and one to stop an animation, okay? So with that in mind, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have the text fade in, and then we're going to have the text fade out. That'll require four keyframes, and if that's not clear, it should be in just a second. I'm going to drop down the text layer, and I'm going to quickly go to transform, which you wouldn't expect for opacity. And right away, I'm going to go into like just a second or two in here, and I'm going to enlarge my timeline so I can see a little bit more detail of what's going on. So let's go just about 1 second in here. So your magnifier's down here. I just dragged in the timeline about a second, and I can see the exact timing right up here. And now I know that I'm going to have 100% opacity at this 1 second mark because we're fading it in. It's going to take a 1 second fade. So I'm going to click the stopwatch next to opacity, and right away we're going to see that that creates a keyframe. I'm going to go ahead and back it up here, and now I'm going to take the opacity and I'm going to put it down to 0. So like I said, a starting keyframe and a stopping keyframe. We'll zoom in, starting keyframe, stopping keyframe. Okay, and now you'll see that this gradually fades in. Now let's say after about 6 seconds or so, I want this to fade right back out. So all I have to do is, it's at 100% opacity. We want it to stay 100% opacity up until it begins fading out. So I'm just going to add in another keyframe here. So now it's going to be 100 to 100. It'll stay 100% all the way through this whole area here. And now same exact thing with about a second. We're going to have it fade out. Now anytime I make a change, it will automatically create a new keyframe. I don't always have to click on this button over here to do that. So now, 4 keyframes later, I have a fade in, and then I have a fade out. Okay, that's the very first one. Okay, from here we're going to move on to some basic movements of text, starting off with position. So let's start there. We're going to back it up, and we know that after a second, let's say that we want our text right here in this exact position. Okay, so I'm going to go to position, and I'm going to hit my stopwatch, and I'm going to back up, and let's go ahead and give this a starting position. Now if you take a look at this, we're working just in the, it's flat right now, it's not 3D, so it's just the X and Y coordinates, and I can move those around accordingly. So whenever I make a change, of course it's going to make a change here. Now, One of the things that I found is when you're working in here with text and you know you're going to be moving it around, sometimes it's nice to kind of shrink up this window so you can see everything that's going on here. Let's go ahead and take the positioning of this and let's move the X position so that it's way off to the side here. So after a second or so, what's going to happen is it's going to bloop, move in like that. So again, a starting keyframe and a stopping keyframe. Now we want that text to stay there for the same amount of time roughly as the fade out. So I'm going to go ahead and click in another keyframe, and this begins my next movement here. As it's fading out, I'm going to have it go out the other side here. So all I'm going to do is take the position and take it right out the other side there. So now we got two movements, 4 keyframes later. It moves in, okay, and now it's going to move out as it's fading out. All right, so that's a position change. Okay, next one on our list here. We have opacity, we have position, and now what we're going to do is we're going to do a rotation. Okay, actually, let's do scale. Let's do scale. Okay, we're going to back it up here, and we're going to say that I want the text at 1 second to be that size. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click the stopwatch for scale, and that will create my first keyframe. And now I'm going to back up to the beginning, and let's have it be relatively large here. We're going to scale this up quite a bit. All right. Now I might also have to adjust my positioning a little bit because I made the text so large it's going to show up now. So I just adjust that a bit. All right, now what it's going to do is it's going to fade in and it's going to scale down to size. Stays that size this whole time. Okay, and once I get up to the point where I know that it's going to be moving and maybe scaling back up, I can go ahead and click the keyframe here. And I can go to my ending point, and let's have it do the exact same thing that it did when it came in. I'm going to have it scale up nice and large. Okay, and if I want to be technical, I can go back to that first keyframe. Oh, 333%. That's what it was when it came in. And let's have it end at exactly that. So I can go ahead and type in numbers here if I don't want to drag this around. All I'm doing is clicking and dragging on these, by the way. Okay, and now we've got that. So again, 4 keyframes later, we've got a scaling down. Stays the same scale now. And now it's going to scale back up as it's fading out and moving off. Boom. There we go. Kind of a neat effect. All right, really super simple. So we have opacity, we did position, we did scale. Let's do a rotation now. So we're going to go ahead and start off at the beginning. Let's say this is where it's going to start the rotation. Actually, yeah. So we'll click the stopwatch here. We're going to back up that second. We're going to have it rotate 360 degrees. Actually, instead of doing this, what I can do is I can say, hey, why don't we just have it rotate 1 time? So I'm going to click in here, type in 1, hit enter, and now it will do 1 rotation from the start. Oh, maybe it won't. Oh, you know why? Because this is exactly the same. So we want that to be 1, and we want this one to be 0. So I'm going to put this down, 0. Okay, now let's see if we did that right. We're going to go here and type that in. So you got to have a starting keyframe and a stopping keyframe. So it will do 1 full rotation by the time it gets to the second keyframe. So again, just to recap that because I couldn't have made that more unclear. My first keyframe is at 0 for the rotation. By the time, you can see it rotating here, by the time it gets to the second keyframe, it's done a full 1 rotation. Okay. Now, if I think that it's rotating way too fast, this is the fun part here. This is where you can start to customize stuff a bit. I think it's rotating a little bit quickly. So I'm going to have it actually rotate a little bit longer. So it's going to come in, rotating, get to a position, and then bloop, it locks into place there. Okay. Now I can do the same exact thing here. I can come over about the same spacing out and click our little keyframe. And now I'm going to have it rotate on its way out as well. So again, a starting, and then we need our stopping. So I'm going to take this back down to 0, hit enter, and now I have a rotation on the way out too. So you can see it rotates in, boom, and now it's going to start rotating, and then it's going to start moving and opacity change and all of that stuff, and it goes out. Okay, so we just very quickly did some basic animations here for text. Now, these are all in the transform feature. Now what we're going to do is we're going to venture out of that. Okay, so we're going to close that up. And at this point, I've got my text already out here. I'm going to create another layer of text. In fact, let's create a couple more layers before we begin this part. Let's go back. Let's go up to layer, and we can go to new, and we're going to bring in a solid. Okay, this solid we're going to make a little bit different color than our background, just so we've got something to work with. And let's go with like this grayish kind of color here, so we can tell the difference between this and the actual composition background. Okay, so there's that. So let's go ahead and take this down 50%. And there, you can see my work area now. Okay, so, and we can see there's some problems too with our text. We're not going to worry about those because my text would actually technically be on the composition right now. So if I wanted to fix this, I would have to transform it, go back to that starting position, and I'd have to drag that so it's further off this way. Let's go ahead and get that out like that. And then we know that it's going to be leaving. So let's go to that last keyframe there, and let's transform that so it's actually all the way off. So just a quick adjustment. Okay, and there's going to be a lot of that in After Effects. You'll get very, very quick at navigating all of this. Okay, so now we've got a solid that we're going to put behind our text so that we can actually see our text when it comes in. Okay, and then the other thing is we're going to create another text layer to work with. I'm going to go ahead and just click the eyeball on this one so we don't see it anymore. And then I'm going to go up to my text tool, and I'm going to go ahead and click anywhere in here, and I'm going to use the same exact boring. Oh, let's style it up here. Red Hawk. Whoa. Hawk Media. Boom. All right, so we got our text. Let's go ahead and change a few other things on here. We can change the size of it. Oh, it helps if you highlight it. Okay, change the size of it, and let's go ahead and change the color of it. Let's make it our red color here. Yeah, somewhere right around in there. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a little bit of a stroke weight. Click OK. Now I can go to stroke weight, and I can say, hey, let's have this actually be black. Okay, click OK. And now the number of pixels that the stroke weight is, we can dial that up a little bit so that shows up on there. Okay, we got that. Okay, and of course we can change the font. So these are all quick adjustments that we can, well, that's kind of fun. All right, let's go with that. And let's dial up the pixel size here for the size. And remember, we got to go back to our move tool, and now we can move that into position. There we go. Awesome. Okay, we are all ready for the next part here, which is going to be the presets of text animation. Okay, heading into the second part of everything here, we've got the presets for text animation. Now these are pretty slick because they are all pre-made. You can customize them, but it gives you kind of a starting area to really create some slick stuff. So let's go ahead and navigate to that. I've got my text in here. I'm actually on my text layer that I'm going to be working with. That's important. And now I'm going to come over to animation presets. Let's take a closer look over here. We've got our effects and presets tab. We're looking at animation presets. I'm going to go ahead and drop that down. And now in here, you can see that there's text presets. I can drop that down. And now we've got a whole bunch of stuff. Let's go ahead and shrink that down here. And we've got animate in and animate out. Let's go ahead and begin with an animate in. We'll start with that one. Now, before I go any further, I've got my indicator here at the beginning. Okay, so the playhead is at the start of the timeline because that's where we're going to have it animated in at. And let's go ahead and do just a quick fade up and flip espresso eye chart. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Drop in by character. Let's just do that. Okay, so we're going to drop in by character. Now, there's two ways that I can get this effect on there. With my layer selected, like it is right now, I can go ahead and just double click on it. Or I can always grab this and I can drag it right onto the layer that I want to add that effect to. Now, that effect is on there, okay, and your first inclination is to go up to effects and controls and look in that tab, but for these preset text animations, they don't show up there. Okay, so that was a little bit of confusion when I first started doing this. I wanted to point that out. If I go to my Red Hawk Media layer, let's go ahead and zoom in on this. So, okay, if I go here and I drop this down, now I can go to text, okay, and I'm going to see that there's some animator stuff that's actually in here now. So I can drop that down, and I can see that there's a range selector, and there's a position, okay, and I've got a few other features. Now, all of these presets, depending on what they're what they do are going to do slightly different things, but the same principles of what we worked with before on the animations. You have a starting keyframe and a stopping keyframe. Okay, and if it's a more like a involved animation, you may have several keyframes that are in here. Like when you drop down your advanced, you may have more things that are in there that you can actually keyframe out and get that all adjusted. Okay, we're not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to worry about where it starts. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom back out here so we can see what this is doing right now. We can see our two keyframes. When I do this, you can see that it's dropping in the letters one by one here. And it starts here, and it's completely done at the second keyframe. Now, of course, along the way here, I can make this happen a lot quicker. So instead of taking like almost 3 seconds, I can shorten it down to 1 second. So now it's just bloop, 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 and it drops in pretty quick. Okay. Now, if I want this to be in a slightly different place for the drop in, what I can do is on the very first keyframe here, I can go ahead and go to my pointer tool or my move tool. I can go ahead and take this off the actual composition. So now when it drops in, it's dropping into that position. Now, if we want it to drop in further, I'm pretty sure that the position here, we could take that and we can drop that down a whole lot more. So now, when that actually comes in, okay, oh, it's dropping down more, but I positioned it differently. So I'm going to grab my move tool again, and I'm going to bring that down because this is what's going on. So it's starting up there, and it's dropping down that 443 pixels. Okay, so now I can go ahead and position this now that I can see where it starts at. I can take that and put it right outside of the composition area. Okay, so this is one of the basic preset text animations. Okay, and this is an animate in. Now let's say that we want to animate out on this. Let's go ahead and take this just to the 2-second mark so it happens pretty quickly. And I'm going to go ahead and take this animator, this text, and take it down. And I'm going to go back to my animation presets, and I'm going to twirl that back up, twirl this one down. And now that we're looking at the animate out, let's say we have a random fly off here. So again, to show you the other thing, I've got my layer selected, double click on it. I just now added the random fly off. If I go back to my text, drop that down, oh, I now have an animator 1 and an animator 2. It added that on. So under animator 2, go ahead and drop this down, and I'm looking in at the range, and you can see I've got 2 keyframes here. You can see between the starting of this and the stopping of this, the letters are randomly flying off in different directions here. Okay, now you can see that they're flying off, but they're not flying all the way off the composition. So just like before, we've got a position. Okay, our X position is not quite enough to move it all the way off the canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and just jack that up here to the point where it's actually all the way off the screen like it's supposed to be. Like so. Alright, now we can take this. We can see doop, 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 and they're all gone. Perfect, and they all fly off. Now I'm betting that under the advanced, we could probably change the location of where these are flying off to. Right now they're just flying off to the right. What if we have them actually, the positioning, what if we took the X and Y coordinates and we took them and moved them so that it's actually flying off like this. So now the position is a little bit different. You can see that the letters are moving diagonally now out of there because I changed that percentage. Okay, so the X and Y affects all that. Now there's other things in here that we can mess around with too. Okay, the shape, the percentage of the units, based on characters excluding spaces. We could do entire words. We could do all of the characters. We could do an entire line. So whatever your need is for this animation, you can change that. Okay, so that's a quick animate in and an animate out for the presets. Now, most of these presets are almost identically the same as far as how they work and where you're going to find the information for. So I'm going to just kind of cut this part short and assume that you're going to be trying these different animate ins and animate out. Don't forget, if you are working with other things in text, there are lots of other things, lots of other preset things that are created for you here. Okay, so I just wanted to start with some of the basics here. Just to recap, we did opacity, We did an X and Y rotation. We did an X and Y position change. We did a scale change. And then we did the preset text animations. Okay, this is part one of a couple parts here of text animations. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of Red Hawk Media. Bye.